After Bonnie and Marcy facilitate Molto Larvo's transformation into a mellowed out form, thus saving the Glass Kingdom from certain doom, Simon arrives comedically late with some backup.
Don't worry, I brought help!
From the van come tumbling out some banana guards, Bronwyn, and none other than Finn Mertens.
Hey PB, y'all got monster trubs?
Oh, you can believe my heart skipped a beat upon seeing this older Finn who has picked up a few new battle scars and has a bushy beard. And the thing that warmed my heart the most is that Finn looks so darn happy. The expression on his face, the tone of his voice, the way he joyfully grooves to Glass Boy's performance of Eternity with You. I know this is only a brief glimpse of Finn during this point in time, but he just seems so darn content. It was low-key beautiful, and I felt so happy for this amazing fictional person who we got to witness grow up over the years.
That man's towel just blew off.
My bad.
Although, yeah, Finn did accidentally flash the whole Glass Kingdom, as well as Marceline and Princess Bubblegum. Marcy was shocked, but P-Bubs was completely unfazed. So, back near the start of Obsidian, when Marceline's house was visited by the Glass-Assassins, I assume Simon ran to the Candy Kingdom to recruit help from the Banana Guards, which might be a questionable decision, but the Banana Guards do have stables of jelly horses for transportation, which would enable the crew to ride out into the wilds to find Finn the Human and request his help. I totally think this van belongs to Finn, and that Finn now basically lives in it as he ventures across the Land of Ooo to slay any monsters that get out of hand. That's probably why Finn feels like he can so nonchalantly shower inside the van at any time, even when he's got company. Obviously, the van is currently busted, or maybe it just ran out of gas, because it has to be towed into the Glass Kingdom by the jelly horses. Finn driving around the Land of Ooo in a van that is on the verge of breaking down might seem a little lame at first, except that's also how the characters from Devil May Cry get around, and that seems like a pretty fucking roaring goofy-ass time to me. I don't know, man, I see some great potential in terms of van life adventures. I'm a fan of this development for Finn. Also, I can't help but think that Finn could have his own line of Princess Bubblegum designed devil breakers. Okay, sorry, I just could not help but think of DMC5 when I saw Finn's van. Finn essentially becoming a nomad of sorts makes his original iconic dwelling, the treehouse, that much more legendary and sentimental in Finn's life. Vagabond Van Finn just seems appropriate and poetic to me. I bet Banana Man was the person to originally get this van running for Finn, and if so, he would no doubt be the mechanic Finn goes to when the van needs maintenance or major repairs. Banana Man is a hell of a mechanic, as we saw in episodes such as We Fixed a Truck, among others. If you recall, Banana Man actually lived relatively close to the treehouse.
I'm just excited you called me over. We're neighbors. We should help each other out.
So when Finn needs his van fixed, he would be returning to the general location of where he grew up. This scenario I've imagined actually reminded me of Full Metal Alchemist. In FMA, when Edward needs his automail fixed, Ed and Al would return to their hometown of Resembool, which is the location of their former house that no longer exists, because the brothers burned it down for thematic purpose. Ed also always takes the opportunity to visit his mother's grave, and I imagine Finn would similarly pay tribute to the Fern Sword tree. Obviously, the parallels are not one-to-one, and the treehouse was destroyed by a hostile force rather than Finn and Jake, and Finn has actual automail that would no doubt be maintained by Princess Bubblegum. However, it's that sentiment of briefly returning to the land where your home is forever but a memory. That's why I wanted to make this comparison between AT and FMA, because I find that sentiment sad yet beautiful. Okay, so it's time to bring up the question of, how old is Finn in Obsidian? Just how much time has passed since Golba visited the Land of Ooo in the series finale? If I had to take an educated guess, I would say it could have been anywhere from 5 to 25 years. The aesthetic style of Adventure Time is very simplistic with few distinguishing features when it comes to humanoid faces, so I could see this being Finn in his early 20s or his early 40s. Finn in Obsidian is still voiced by Jeremy Shada, and his voice sounds nearly the same as it did in the 10th and final season of the series.
Hey, PB. Y'all got monster trubs?
In contrast, the adult Finn in the episode Puhoy had a different voice actor by the name of Jonathan Frakes.
Alphanumeric.
This could indicate that Obsidian is not very far into the future. However, in Puhoy, it was unmistakable that we were being shown older Finn, and he was prominently featured at different stages of life throughout the episode. In Obsidian, we don't even expect to see Finn, merely his appearance comes as a surprise, and the fact that he's noticeably older is another surprise on top of that. Therefore, giving Finn the voice we're used to allows the audience to immediately identify this fellow as our lovable hero. Finn's voice not sounding that much older could have been a creative concession of sorts to smooth out the viewing experience for the audience, and might not be that good of an indicator of Finn's actual age in Obsidian. If we're gonna judge by the robustness of Finn's beard and muscles, he appears to be younger than when he sired offspring in the Pillow Dimension world in the episode Puhoy, but that's obviously also not an ideal way to guess Finn's age, because beards can be trimmed, and you can acquire flab and lose muscle mass later in life depending on your metabolism and diet. Even Finn having a full beard doesn't tell us much, because the rate at which facial hair grows can change quite drastically in a short time for young adults. So just because Finn at the age of 17 looked like this, that doesn't mean he would be incapable of growing a full beard a couple years later. Also, you have to remember that the reason teenage Finn never had any facial hair was because BMO would regularly pluck Finn's face while he slept.
Forever young.
There are other things in Obsidian we could try to analyze in order to attempt to gauge the passage of time. One such example is the shirt that Hunson Abadir gave to Marceline in the episode Marcy and Hunson.
And guess what I got from a vendor? It looks too big to me, but they said that's the style now with punk rockers.
That shirt has seriously faded in Obsidian, and considering how Marcy is a vampire, meaning she's out either at night or she has to be in the shade, it should have taken a pretty darn long time for the shirt to fade that much. However, Bonnabelle and Marceline canonically share clothes, so maybe it was PB that took the shirt out into the sun. Or maybe the shirt just got washed with bleach a few too many times, and we don't even know the material of this t-shirt, so it is just not a good item to try and estimate how much time has passed. There was one line of dialogue from Marceline that could provide another clue.
It's like I don't even remember what it's like to be hurt and sad.
That made me think it has been a really long time since Marceline had an existential crisis as recently as Season 7 of Adventure Time. But I will readily admit that's a presumptuous assumption and hardly counts as good evidence, especially since Marcy was being really dramatic a moment prior.
I'll write a new, angrier song. The other day, you used my brush. It was okay, I didn't mind.
The last thing I'll talk about to gauge Finn's age is even more vague when it comes to estimating the flow of time. Simon Petrikov. Simon does not look like he aged at all. If 10 or 20 years have passed, you would expect him to maybe get some gray hairs at least, unless he dyes his hair. However, does Simon even age naturally? We saw what happened the first time the Ice Crown's influence was stripped from him.
I am getting on the death bus.
I've got you in my sights, Simon.
The dude was going to die. But as we saw in the series finale, Betty made a wish with the Ice Crown while inside of Golb.
However it has to happen. I wish for the power to keep Simon safe.
So now that Simon was freed from the crown, does he age naturally from this point forward? Could the influence of Golbetti keep Simon safe as long as Golbetti continues to exist in its current form, thus making Simon immortal? We really don't know what the deal is with Simon, there's just too many possibilities. Ultimately, I don't think we have a good way to narrow down how much time has passed in Obsidian and how old Finn is, which, while a tad frustrating, is also kind of fun. As you just saw, it can lead to a whole bunch of speculation, and it does enable far greater ranges of personal headcanons. But if I was forced to bet on a specific value, I would say it has been a decade. It's 10 years into the future, Finn is 27. Let me know how old you think Finn is in the comments. There's one more thing I want to discuss about Finn before moving on. I was delighted to see that adult Finn does not rely on a permanently attached prosthesis and is content living his life with one arm. I think it's safe to assume Finn still utilizes a robot arm for serious monster hunting, or as I joked earlier, maybe Finn has a collection of robotic arms. But Finn doesn't feel the need for such a device when it comes to performing regular activities of day-to-day life. This is a continuation of where we saw Finn's character arc go in the series finale, and I'm going to play a couple clips from my review of Come Along With Me to exemplify what I'm talking about. It's interesting how Betty states that Golb's guts break them apart into their essential forms, and Finn's essential form is one that remains armless. It's indicative that Finn has come to terms with his inevitable body that has been foreshadowed as far back as the second season, I think? Back in the episode Breezy, when Finn was at the peak of his depression, his desire was to circumvent his missing limb because its lack represented a loss of innocence and purpose, among other things. Now, Finn is content with himself. He has self-actualized by accepting loss, learning from it, and growing into a beautiful flower, as Jake recently put it. Buff little bionic baby no more, Finn is now a man. And toward the end of the finale, we see Finn chooses to forgo a robotic prosthesis altogether. Thematically, I think that's very powerful, and I'm happy that Finn is happy with himself. Back when Distant Lands was first announced, and I saw that promotional poster where Finn had a new prosthetic arm, I wondered if that interpretive narrative I weaved in my series finale review would still continue to apply. And it turns out, Obsidian just further reinforced all those ideas. Older Finn is indeed perfectly content and completely at ease, living life with one arm. Just looking at this happy man's face makes me want to shed a tear. Oh, also, Finn's got nips now. I nearly forgot to mention the nipples. While Finn's appearance no doubt temporarily steals the spotlight, we cannot forget who jumped out of the van before him, Bronwyn. And can I just say I love her new outfit. Bronwyn is Jake's granddaughter, the daughter of Kim Kil-won. We saw her picture for the first time in the episode Ocarina, and she was one of the main characters in the episode Wheels. She's got sick lightning powers. I am so happy she is still skateboarding! Actually, she might even use her skateboard in combat, considering she came here to help Marceline and Princess Bubblegum at Simon's request. Speaking of, did she randomly stumble across Simon, who was in need of help? Does she have her own monster-slaying service that Simon went to? Or, and this is the fun one of featuring her alongside Finn, does she actually hunt monsters with Finn as his partner? Are these two a monster-busting duo? That would be really cool, and her inclusion kind of implies this the most for me, so that is definitely the headcanon I am going with. I will elaborate further on that idea when we talk about Jake later in this video, but before we get to that heavy stuff, I have one more fun, lighthearted Bronwyn hypothesis. Maybe the original idea to include Bronwyn and Obsidian came about for a meta reason. Obsidian is about Princess Bubblegum and Marceline's relationship, and we had some low-key bubbling in the episode Wheels, which Bronwyn was the central character of. In that episode, Bonnie and Marcy show up to the park together to watch the skateboarding thrash-off between Bronwyn and Jake. They were totally out on a date together. Maybe the creators looked over past bubbling moments while preparing Obsidian, and the idea arose for Bronwyn to be included in this Distant Lands special. Or maybe not, but I liked the thought, so I wanted to share it. Alright, let's get to what might end up being quite a controversial topic. Jake the dog. Finn the human has a tattoo of his brother's face on his chest. Jake's winking expression, by the way, is straight out of the show's opening intro, which is just, mwah, what a wonderful choice. Okay, so potentially there could be any number of reasons why Finn has this tattoo. One fun half-joke is that this could actually be Jake. Jake made himself flat and is just resting on Finn's bosom. That doesn't explain the flowers, but obviously this is more of a fun, amusing little thought. Maybe Finn got this tattoo because he is a mad lad, and he loves his brother to death. Maybe one night Finn and Jake got really drunk and took a bunch of drugs, and then when they woke up, they had each other's face tattooed on their chests. Maybe Finn lost a bet to Jake, and the sanctity of his pecs were on the line. Maybe Finn did something really terrible, and Jake broke it off with him, and Finn, heartbroken, made a rash decision to get Jake's face tattooed across his chest to show the undying love he has for his brother. There are virtually endless scenarios, but I think Jake is dead. I think that after Jake passed, Finn got this tattoo to honor the memory of his brother. Those flowers around Jake are forget-me-nots, and for me personally, that was all I needed to know. Jake's influence on Finn's life was monumental, and I know Finn would look back at that with utmost happiness.
You're a beautiful flower, and I love to watch you grow.
I warned you fuckers about this in my last video. That tattoo is incredibly bittersweet. Hope you tune in for the next video where I will try not to cry. Okay, so now that I have my composure back, let's continue on. For us to see Finn's chest tattoo, he obviously has to have no shirt on, and if we're gonna have that joke where his towel falls off, that makes perfect sense. But there was really no reason to also make Finn shirtless at the dance after he had a chance to put some clothes on. What I'm getting at here is that this implies that Finn regularly doesn't wear a shirt. And the reason for that is because he wants to show off this Jake tattoo. He wants Jake's face out there in the world. He wants to remind people about the memory of Jake. And I think that's kinda sweet. Now let's get back to Bronwyn. Remember how I briefly speculated about Bronwyn showing up with Finn because she might be shadowing him as a hero or monster hunter? Or that perhaps the two of them are a formal monster fighting duo already? Maybe Bronwyn first teamed up with Finn as a result of Jake's death, so that she could indirectly grow closer to her grandfather who passed away. Jake could barely find time to be in the lives of his kids, much less his grandkids.
Yeah, I love Dad and everything, but he's only ever met me twice.
So it would make sense for Bronwyn to not have had much of a relationship with him. I would not be surprised that even after the time skip, Bronwyn's most formative interactions with Jake were those that took place during the episode Wheels, which only really left her with a strong impression of how much Jake can get carried away when he wants recognition.
Grandpa! You're cool! You're cool! Just please be okay, Grandpa!
It was a rather small and superficial glimpse at her grandfather's overall personality. But I'm sure talk of Jake and his many exploits comes up now and again in conversations that take place among all the beings that inhabit the Land of Ooo. Bronwyn strikes me as the sentimental type. After Jake's passing, I could imagine her reaching out to Finn to vicariously live in the shoes of her grandpappy to better understand the kind of person he was on a deeper level. Whatever headcanon you choose to believe, whether you want to believe that Jake died or that he is still alive, there is a chance we will never have direct validation. I see the Jake tattoo very much as purposeful ambiguity, where the evidence points pretty directly to something, but there is plenty of room for other people to have their own personal interpretations that could give them more joy or pleasure. And that range of possibilities, even if improbable, is actually really fun and cool. All this being said though, if Distant Lands actually gets funded for a ton more specials in the future, I could see us finding out what canonically happened. Okay, so I just talked about how different headcanons are good actually, but that doesn't mean we can't hold them up to scrutiny. I personally am convinced that Jake is dead, but let's discuss arguments against that idea. A knee-jerk argument might be, but what about the last Distant Lands special where Finn and Jake finally come together again? Well, obviously, based on the first two Distant Lands specials, the time periods are all thrown about. I'm pretty sure Obsidian takes place after the events of Together Again. That could prove to be incorrect. Maybe for the final special they will update the promotional poster again to include an older Finn, but I doubt it. This next claim we're gonna cover is kinda weird considering how much imagery and references to Jake dying there have been throughout the series, but despite all that, I still get comments on my Adventure Time videos about how Jake is actually immortal due to the events in the episode Sons of Mars. I just want to make it clear that when Lincoln sacrifices his immortality to death to resurrect Jake, he does not bestow Jake with immortality. Now, Jake living longer than your standard Land of Ooo dog, that is a legit possibility, because one of Jake's biological progenitors is Warren Ampersand. However, Jake has been aging faster than Finn at the same rate as his brother Jermaine. And I don't think we know the reason why the pups age rapidly and then slow down. That could be due to Rainicorn genetic material, rather than Warren Ampersand's. Nonetheless, the idea still has some merit, and I will admit that in theory, Jake could outlive Finn. But even if this was to be confirmed, there's no reason Jake had to have a natural death. Maybe he went out in a blaze of glory. There is this fun but morbid theory that Jake is actually still alive in 1,000 years, and he is within the wall around the Pup Kingdom. It's a really neat idea. If Jake is dead, that's already super grim, but imagine if his body was maintained in some sort of stasis where he's actually alive. Horrifying stuff. But while it's a cool idea, there's not much going in the way of support for this theory. The only direct evidence for this is that a section of the wall looks like Jake's eye, and the color around this supposed eye matches the color of Jake's body in certain lighting. For the sake of argument, let's just assume this is indeed an eyeball. Why does it have to be Jake's eyeball, though, when all the pups have eyes that look just like this? There's thousands upon thousands of different pups in the future Land of Ooo, and they generally have Jake's eyes as a design staple. This could simply be a peephole in the wall that a large pup is gazing through, kinda like how Beth does it in the intro. There's also some rather damning extra-textual evidence against the idea of Jake being in the Pup Kingdom wall. Steve Wolfhard, one of the creators of Adventure Time, thought up all this neat 1,000 years into the future imagery. Wolfhard even kept on brainstorming about the wackiness of the Pup Kingdom beyond what we saw in the Adventure Time finale. I have a whole video about this topic that you can check out if this is the first time you're hearing about it and are interested. Anyway, upon being asked about the Jake in the Wall theory, Steve Wolfhard tweeted, "I hadn't heard that one until this week." And then when asked if it's canon, he says no. So if you think the Come Along With Me intro was purposefully orchestrated to imply that Jake could be in the Pup Kingdom walls, that doesn't seem to be the case. Now, this by no means mandates the destruction of any headcanons. If you really like the idea that Jake's body is in the Pup Kingdom wall, I'm not gonna tell you to stop believing it, unless one day Adventure Time demonstrably shows otherwise, of course. But a headcanon with weak support obviously cannot be used as legitimate evidence for Jake outliving Finn in the Distant Lands specials. Speaking of headcanons, I want to feature Wolfhard's headcanon. A while back, SW made an absolutely phenomenal comic about Jake's funeral. It's a little disturbing, but it's so fucking beautiful. To provide context, Wolfhard says, "I had the idea that when Jake eventually passes away, he'd start growing uncontrollably, sort of like how a dead body can let go of its bowels." And in Wolfhard's headcanon, Jake actually does outlive Finn. The Jake that dies in the comic actually has a cane with a little Finn head design. So all these fine peeps show up to Jake's funeral, BMO is smiling, because of course BMO would smile at a funeral, when Jake's body starts to expand as it wrecks the entire Candy Kingdom. Then P-Bubs comes in hot with a helicopter plane hybrid thing and a big ol' suction cup that she uses to drag Jake's ever-inflating body into the ocean until it eventually drops into that crater in the earth and inflates to nicely fill it. Until over time, the continent of Jake is covered in a luscious forest. Wacky, morbid, heartfelt, and beautiful. Yeah, this comic is imbued with the spirit of Adventure Time. I want to feature one last thing before this video draws to a close. Ella Thompson created this really wholesome fan art that played my heartstrings like a fiddle, and I wanted to instill that bittersweet feeling in all of you. So without further ado, Hey, we've arrived at the end of this video. Thank you for watching. If you would like more updates about my channel and want to stay in touch, you can follow me on Twitter. I've been on a break from Twitch, but once the year rolls over, I want to try to stream video games more consistently, so follow my Twitch account if you'd like to tune in. I also archive those streams on my secondary YouTube channel, Uncivilized Live. If you happen to think this channel is a beautiful flower and you love to watch it grow, please consider supporting me on Patreon so that making videos could become a financially stable endeavor for me. That would be alphanumeric. My tarot-based stakes analysis video is coming next, and if you're a patron, you can get a sneak peek. See you next time.